I'm gonna start.
You're a dickhead. So stressed out.
Alright. Welcome back. I hope everybody's doing all right. Back to another great week of podcasting with your favorite podcast, or at least I hope it's your favorite podcast.
Oh my god.
We're here with Far From Finished. I'm your host, Daniel.
And I'm Wallace, except my name is not Wallace. My name is Josh. I'm Wallace on the weekends, but today's Tuesday. So back to what you were saying. This is going to be a very great week of Far From Finished, but it is an even better week of podcasting.
Hey, what an intro for you. Starting off strong. You know, recently I've been hearing a lot of people talk. It's gotten me kind of thinking too. So I've been hearing about The Matrix a lot. Not the movie, just to be clear. I'm not talking about the movie Well, in a sense, I am talking about the movie The Matrix, but I'm not talking directly about the movie.
You're not talking about the franchise, The Matrix. You're talking about like the idea,
the concept
of what it's about.
Exactly. Okay. A lot of people have been bringing it up, how we're in the Matrix or in a simulation. We've talked about it before, but the more it gets talked about, you really got to think, are we in a simulation? Are we in the Matrix? And if so, is there a way to get out of the Matrix, or does it matter?
I don't know. I've been watching some film theories about the actual film, like, of the Matrix. And, like, they were kind of saying, it's like, basically, is like, in the Matrix, it's like 99% of the people like that are like, there's like a red blue pills. 99% of the people will like often choose to like be in the Matrix, but there's always going to be the 1% that doesn't really want to be, so they like choose to go to Zion or like whatever the other like the real world is. Like you choose to like into the like the real world and see like what that is, but it's kind of like they're saying is like, well, why wouldn't the person who created the Matrix create like a secondary like level of the Matrix where the people could say, oh, like I would like the choice to go into the real world. They just like enter into this second level of the Matrix. You know what I mean? To them, it's the real world because they're not in the actual Matrix anymore, but they're still in a Matrix. If that makes sense.
So even if we were to say we're out of the Matrix, we're still inside of the Matrix.
Potentially.
But I mean, it's
like you won't really know if whatever when you come out, if you won't know if that's the real world. You'll just know it's something different
than what you had before.
Right.
I guess if it's better to you, then it wouldn't really matter.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, is that like if whenever you say like, will we know if we're in the Matrix? Like, if as long as we know anything, that means we're alive, and if we're alive, then it doesn't really matter what we're alive in.
Well, alive as far as we know too.
Well, when I say alive, I mean existing as far as consciousness goes. You're experiencing something right now, whether or not it's real or not doesn't mean really anything, since you still have to experience it regardless.
So in that essence, is time linear? Or is it certain?
I don't really know.
In a simulation,
about time at all.
I'm not a computer programmer, but in a game, is it constantly running, or is it? There's no time limit to a game unless you turn it off. Correct.
What do you mean?
In the virtual world, the game's gonna continuously just be going.
You mean like if you keep like Grand Theft Auto on, will it keep turning day and night and day and night and day and night until somebody turns the game off?
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
So there's no end to the game until you turn it off.
Right.
So at what point is there an end to our game or our simulation, if that were to be the case?
Potentially death.
But then wouldn't
that be like your program being turned off?
I guess, so then each of us are our own simulation.
Or each of us are a program in a greater simulation. Like, you know how you have Microsoft Office, like that's a greater simulation, but in Microsoft Office you also have PowerPoint, Excel, Word, and other shits. Like you have like different things that do different things as well
inside of the
one Microsoft Office folder. That's a very small example, but you know what I'm trying to say.
So do you think that's why we repeat a lot of the same things over and over again in history, though? Us being inside of them, us trying to adapt or learn and progressing as a program, if that were the case.
Either that or it's us actually finding progression and something stopping us or coming in and halting our progression.
Is that us being stuck in the matrix? It's just living throughout the, like, not learning from our mistakes and just living through the same things over and over and over again?
I don't know. I mean, personally, I would attribute it more to not learning from our mistakes rather than just like reshaping history or like shaping like the now through like what has been done in history. But I don't know. It's kind of like the idea that we were talking about before. It's like, how do you get knowledge in a world without technology? You have to like write it down. Somebody has to read it, and it's like, okay, well, that means that all I have to do is burn down a library to destroy all your knowledge. So like, if that was the case, then people, like, if I wrote down something to say don't touch the stove because it's hot, if you burn that paper, you're not going to know whether the stove is hot unless you touch it.
But now we have the internet, so once it goes on the internet, it's never gone. There'll always be a place to find it.
But what if the grid shuts down and there's no more internet? Like, what do you do then?
But what are the chances of that happening?
I don't know. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know how viable that option is, but if that's even an option, then that's what I'm trying to say.
So would you say at this point we're at a point past where we've been before?
I mean, definitely.
So I mean, to a point where we might not repeat the same thing, because when you look in the past, every time we get to a certain advancement, something happens: the fall of a dynasty, war, famine. A civilization dies out. But now we have resources, and the only reason we're running out is because of mass consumption and mass production. If anything, that's the only reason we would run out, unless we learn how to balance out these different things. Which is why you see people trying to be vegan or vegetarian, is trying to create a balance. Which is also why I don't think that everyone should go vegan or everyone should go vegetarian, is because there should be a balance. Eating animals isn't the problem per se. I'm not saying all of it's healthy for you. If you eat too much red meat, it's going to be bad for you. Well, but if you only eat vegetables and no meat, it necessarily...
That's kind of interesting to think about, though, is like to say, like, when wars used to be started, it was like over like resources, power, and what was the other thing we said? Is resources, power, and something else. But regardless, it's like over those types of things. If you want to just focus on resources, like in war during those times, people were fighting for resources, but at the same time, they were balancing out the consumption by killing other people. In today's world, without like necessarily like an actual war, and with the overproduction of resources, I mean, not production, consumption of resources, now we're not even really fighting for resources because we're not really fighting, and we're not really balancing anything out because we're also not really at war, like as far as like people aren't dying as much as they used to, as far as like in war terms.
And it makes me think, so war hasn't been a thing, but it's been talked about. It's talked about all the time.
Definitely.
We have
been
nukes.
a thing. What are you talking
about?
No,
it's been a thing. No, I mean,
you mean like of
recently.
Okay.
Yeah, war isn't a big. I mean, I guess we were, as of America, being America, we were in Iraq, and I think right now we're in, over in Syria.
Right. I mean, there hasn't been like a major world war or anything recently.
Nothing
like
too
There's
big.
still like here and there shit, but nothing super significant.
But I don't get why we necessarily need war. I talk about this all the time because, you have people who say you should thank the people in your country that serve your country. Mm-hmm. And I get that, maybe I'll say you're brave. You have courage for doing that. You chose to do that. But I also think that, these people are choosing to do that. And it's not something we necessarily should have. So I don't believe in it. So it's hard. That's a hard thing for me.
See, it's like, the only way you could say we shouldn't have it is if nobody in the entire world had a military. And like, that makes sense. It's like, in a world where we're all human and we should be pushing towards a similar goal to like better the earth or better ourselves, then why would you need a military? But not everybody in this world thinks that logically. So it's kind of difficult to say. It's like, nobody wants to be the first person to put their guns down, even if everybody has their guns out. like if everybody has a gun and everybody's pointing them, nobody wants to be the first person to put them down because logistically you're the first person to die.
As of now, yeah, you don't want to be the
Right.
person without an army.
What you're talking about is in a world where nobody has any guns. Why would we need a gun?
I'm saying
This is a world where everybody has guns.
I don't get
so
the reason.
why would we need a gun? That's like kind of a difficult
I could
argument.
understand potentially the reason for war then, and there are definitely arguments as to why war was something that was beneficial to the advancement of society, building resources, building bigger civilizations, therefore where you could work more and build more things, you have more people in order to build a better civilization.
Right.
Because if you have less people, it's going to be harder to get to where you need to go. But if you have more people, then you can get more people to work together.
Well, it depends.
By rule.
It depends. It's like, if you have less people, it's easier to connect to everybody and actually make sure everybody's doing what they need to do. If you have more people, it's harder to connect with people, but it's easier to get things done faster. Exactly. As long as everybody is actually doing something. But it's harder to keep people motivated when you have more people because they don't feel like they're being paid attention to or they're not special enough.
But back in the
or
day,
their work isn't being appreciated. Not necessarily. I'm not saying like everywhere. I'm saying like as far as like in large scale proponents.
Yeah, but when ancient civilizations were getting built and war was
also
over territories were a lot more frequent. It was a little bit different because if you weren't picking up slack, they were gonna kill you.
Well, yeah. Usually, if you were working on any construction or anything in that time, you were probably a slave. So yeah, I mean that makes sense.
Yeah, you were.
So yeah, I mean if you're talking about somebody saying this is my craft, I like doing this, and that's different than saying I want to keep living. Let me make sure I'm doing this. Fuck.
See, ethically, it's hard to say. Would we have built faster if we all worked together? Because when the world was unknown, the people that discovered more land were usually people trying to who wanted power or needed resources. Kind of takes me back to when you think of a microorganism and how people believe we evolved to how we are now. Microorganisms, how did they end up evolving to where they need to be? Was because they wanted food. At first you didn't have any eyes, you would just move around, and then whenever you would sense food, you would stop and eat it. But over time, you'd get eyes so you could see your food, and you would waste less time. You get your food, and then over time it kind of progressed to where you get legs, arms, whatever.
Okay.
But it's almost the same way as then you have nothing, and then basically in order to get what you want, you have to go out and spread your wings. You have to. In order to get in order to get these resources you need, you're gonna have to go out and find it, right. And then from there, maybe having more power will become a thing as well, and then you're gonna build your territories, and then you just gotta build from there, and it's gonna get into eventually, So
what you're saying is that maybe the fact that we had murderers and rapists as conquistadors to go out and do what others wouldn't. That was a good thing in certain ways.
I'm not saying the raping and murdering is a good thing. That's not what I'm saying at all.
But they did have the balls to go and say, I don't know what's over there on the edge of the earth, or if there is an edge of the earth, but I'm going to sail this here boat over there and I'm going to see what happens. Because I got a big dick and I'm laying it right here on this table.
And there's another thing. If you want to look at it, is it super fucked up that you had people like Christopher Columbus come over here and say, I founded America, and these people are, hey, we live here, bud. You didn't find it.
You may have found us, but you didn't find this place.
We've been here for a while, thanks though.
And somebody stepping in your house and like, oh, this place looks nice, I guess it's mine. And you're just like, well, I mean, we can talk about like negotiations of maybe you purchasing this land, but I mean, you just sitting here and planting your flag is a little ambiguous, no? It
is. And then so after the fact, and later on, since he founded it, he did find it for that side of the world,
Said, wow, I found it.
He said there's a whole new land over there for them. He did find it, which, so it's not necessarily wrong to say, it's just not correct 100%.
So it's not wrong, but it's not correct. Hmm.
100%.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily wrong, but it's also not completely correct.
Tick tock, tick tock.
Shut up.
Somebody get a dictionary.
So then later, you have the Pilgrims who were sent over to basically discover and set down here. They also were fucked up and decided, hey, we're gonna kill these people. This is gonna be our land now, and they decided to settle in and fight the British
Right.
because they said we want this to be our own country. Now, is any of that sound ethically great? Absolutely not. But would America be what it is now?
Probably
Absolutely not.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Okay, so are you asking is it like acceptable? Like, is history acceptable because we are where we're at? It's like, in my opinion, no, because we're not in that great of a place. Like, it's the greatest it's ever been. That doesn't mean everything's been figured out.
No, I guess where I was going is to say that I don't believe that war should be a thing, but in the past, it's had its purposes. Not all the time. A lot of wars were not needed.
Well, I mean, by your logic of saying why do we need an army or why do we need a military, then none of the wars were needed.
But if your village is running out of resources and you're the leader and you have no food and the only way to survive is
to go and kill another village.
I mean, sometimes you got to do what you have to do.
See, but then that's what I'm saying. It's like, if you say that, then how do you have the point of view saying, like, why do we have a military?
We've
do you
evolved.
even have that point of view? Because if you have that point of view, you should have the point of view of saying, okay, we're almost out of resources. Time to figure out where we can travel or trade for, or maybe even integrate with other tribes.
No one's conquesting.
Be able to create, huh?
No one's conquesting anymore. Like, there's no need.
My point is that if you are a leader of a tribe and your last resort is conquesting, what are you gonna do as the leader of your tribe? You're gonna be like, no, we can't go over there and kill those people. They're nice. They made sandwiches for us last Thanksgiving. Like, or are you gonna be like, all right, gang, look, this is what we gotta do. You guys are hungry, right? I'm hungry too. I get it. No, Billy, calm down. I know your wife is hungry too, man. Like, I get it. Let's figure this shit out right now. And then some random person in the back of the fucking room is going to yell out, let's murder the next town over and take their shit. And everybody in the room is going to think that it's a crazy idea until you get like, shit, that's our last resort. All right, let's do it. Let's get it together. Let's fucking do it. It's like, at that point, that's whenever that happens. That's conquest.
But there's no need for that now.
Now?
And that's what I'm saying is now. At one point, I'm not going to say it was right.
Right.
But possibly there was reasoning behind it.
Okay.
The people were still discovering things. People were figuring things out, trying to understand things and didn't really know of the world. We have a pretty solid understanding of the world now to a degree, We
also have a pretty good deal of resources.
Exactly. And we have knowledge at our fingertips. So at what point, I understand we do need a military, and just in case of defensive purposes.
See, but the thing is that if you have the point of view of saying that even sometimes conquest has good reasoning, you have to have a military to even start a conquest. You have to have that set up beforehand. If tomorrow you wake up and you realize, fuck, it's time to conquest because we don't have any other choice, and you don't have a military, what are you gonna do?
Do we need a conquest now?
No, I'm saying if some situation was to arise where that was necessary and
it's
you didn't have and not need it, then to need it and not have it, basically.
Okay, with that being said,
but I do not agree with the fucking trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that are being dumped into the military. That seems a little excessive. The way that
for huge tanks and
the way that we carry out our spending for the military seems a tad excessive. I'm not necessarily well versed on how X amount of dollars goes exactly where and for what it's used for, but I guarantee that a lot of people in Washington get paid a lot of money. So I don't know. My point is that whenever it comes down to it, it's the military is necessary, but it's not so necessary. It's not as necessary as we make it seem. It's not so important that we need to spend more money on it than fixing the water situation in Flint.
Exactly. I'll say if we were going to focus on military, it should be something. I don't agree with pretty much anything Trump says, But I will say Space Force, a military getting ready for space. That'd be something to put money towards. If we're talking about Conquest.
Seems a little ridiculous too.
At the moment, because we don't have much explored,
Right.
but we shouldn't be focusing on, I've got the bigger dick and trying to slap it around, at other countries saying no, I do,
Right. Or
I don't.
We shouldn't even be participating in like foreign affairs that have like nothing to do with us, as far as like things with like North Korea and stuff like that. Like, why are y'all having Twitter wars and shit like that? Like, what does that have to do with productivity? Like, our president and y'all's fucking what's it called, dictator are fucking having a Twitter war just to see who's the silliest person on the planet. I mean, they're already in competition for silliest looking person on the planet. But that, like, I don't know what it's gonna come down to. Like, I don't know what, like, how much more Twitter is gonna allow at this point. And like, we have a fucking two of the world's leaders and dominators, like some of the biggest dominators the world has ever seen, as far as like political power and like how many eyes are paying attention to them, going to war on a fucking social media app. This shit's funny as fuck, in my opinion.
It's stupid. I mean, what does that mean for us? And it's terrible because the people, it may not seem like everyone's suffering, but a good portion of the people are suffering.
Right.
Especially, I guarantee you over there's a good amount of people suffering in that country, and you have the leader just bullshitting on Twitter. That's terrible. I think it's stupid.
I mean, it's like, what do you expect? At this point, it's like, I don't really know how to answer whether or not we live in a simulation, but I definitely probably think, in my opinion, I think we do. At this point, it's just like so much shit that's happening in the world, not just like in my life personally, but also in like social interactions with things that actually matter in the world. This shit just seems like a fucking cartoon. Like, somebody's writing this shit by the day, and like maybe even like a low budget cartoon. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't even put that much effort into the script. At this point, they're just throwing shit together,
throwing shit out there at this. I don't think we need to repeat what we've done in the past at this.
Well, I'm sure everyone's thought that for the entirety of history on civilization.
At this point, you think, what's next? Because you could have it be a nuclear bomb that's going to wipe us out, or is it going to be lack of resources that's going to wipe us out? Is it going to be the weather that's going to wipe us out because we fucked ourselves? I mean, pretty much all of this is because of ourselves. Some people believe that, I'm kind of relate this back to our last podcast a little bit as well, is when it comes to our ego, is the fact of who we feel like we are, especially when you look at people, if we're comparing, we already used Trump and Kim Jong-un,
mm-hmm.
People who want to wave their dicks around to prove something and say, hey, I got all this pride and this ego. For what, though? At what expense does it matter? I guess to you in that moment, but if you were to put that aside and actually understand, you are not that. You want to make your mark on this world as if it's going to really matter.
See, I don't know. It's like, I get having pride in your country, because it's like, I do appreciate the people that have fallen in war, fighting for my right, like, to freedom and things like that. I do appreciate that, but it's like, I do also see the other side of sayings, like, well, why was war necessary in the first place? Like, why did this person have to die so that I could feel this free? Like, why was that necessary? Just in the same way as, like, why did Jesus have to die on the cross for my sins? For us to understand. Why was that the move? You know what I mean? Like, is there no other way for anybody to actually learn anything? And if not, then that's pretty fucking sad, in my opinion.
I just want to know, what was the first time that someone sat there in their own little town or village, whatever you want to call it at the time, and said, hey, I have an idea.
I mean, it had probably something to do with greed, power, territory. I mean, it's like, It's like you don't probably care if someone sits in that chair over there unless that's your chair and you were sitting in it beforehand. And even then, knowing like you probably wouldn't care so much to like even cause a scene about it. But it's like if that was your mother's chair that she built from her bare hands and she died that morning, and then somebody took your seat and it was that seat, then maybe you might feel differently. So it's like, I guess, like in the accumulation of everything that goes on around you, maybe it affects how you perceive like regular life. And in some cases, that can have dire consequences.
I mean, perception is reality.
For you, it's your reality at least.
That's why I always see that. That just brings me back to the Matrix. If we're in a simulation, if our perceptions are reality, wouldn't each of our own thoughts be our own world to a degree? How you see the world is gonna be your world, essentially.
Right.
Because however you see the world is not how I'm gonna see the world.
Correct.
And what do we decide is the absolute truth? Because there is
the similarities that do come between both of our worlds.
I mean,
the things we can agree on, probably.
Give me 1 second here. I'm gonna look up
I mean, in my opinion, it would probably lie somewhere in the middle, like somewhere between the lines. Like, obviously, you're gonna have your perceptions, and I'm gonna have mine, but the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. Not necessarily gonna be like that every time. You might have a 60-40, and I might have a 60-40, but for the most part, we're gonna at least reasonably be able to agree on something.
So looking up the definition.
You're a goober McFagba, dude.
It's something that's true in all times and all places. It's something that is always true no matter what the circumstances. It is a fact that cannot be changed. For example, there are no round squares. That would be an absolute truth.
Or a round square.
But the thing is, okay, wow. But this is what I'm saying is, okay, if that's the case, what if I say that a square is round because that's how I see it?
Well, then I would say that you are stupid because there are no round squares. Square is a force-shaped object, or not object, a force-shaped something. Prism? Is it called a prism? I don't think it's. What is it called when you say it, like when you're talking about a shape, but it's like you could talk about like any shape in this form because it's like a general, like you're talking about a general. Fuck that, it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, a square has four sides that are all even. If something's round, even if it's a circle or an oval, it doesn't have any sides.
So, someone else truly believes that that's a fucking.
Then they're delusional because a square is a square that was created by somebody. Somebody said that is a square, and then they defined a square by being something. So if now somebody looks at some fucking basketball and said, look, mommy, there's a square. It's like, all right, bud, you're a dummy. Like, that's not a square. You can say whatever you want. You're allowed to say whatever you want. But if you actually mean that round thing is a square, then I get to look at you and call you stupid.
What if I made a whole nation start calling circles squares?
That would be interesting.
At that point, would the circle be a square?
To your nation?
Exactly.
Yes, because you redefine what a square is.
And
if you can redefine what a square is to somebody else, then that, my friend, is not a nation. That's probably a cult.
And that's what so we redefine our lives every day by the decisions we make.
What?
I said we redefine the lives that we live every day by the decisions we make.
But not in the way to say that I knew what a square was before. It was a four-sided object. But now, instead of a square being a four-sided object, it's a zero-sided object because today's Tuesday.
But in that moment, both truths lie, I guess, in a sense. They're both true, but to say they're both absolute truths?
They're definitely not absolute truth. Because, okay, so look, then that would be, if you say that a square is round, that could be true to you, but it could never be absolutely true, even if you got other people to believe it. Because it could even be true to them, but it's not absolutely true. What did the definition say?
It's true at all times and in all places.
Thank you.
But that's what I'm saying.
So
If a whole nation were to believe
that's not
that
all places, because there's a nation next door that's looking at
but
them
neither
like
would be
idiots.
absolute truths. To say anything's an absolute truth at that point is kind of hard.
Okay, I guess, but that's even okay. But I would argue to say that even in your nation, where people say, "Look at that square, it's round," or "Look at this round object, that's a square," even those people probably understand that either they don't have the knowledge to understand what a square is, or that they understand what a square is and they're just being stupid, or not stupid, but maybe like delusional. This is a stupid example
To you
personally.
I'm just letting you know that absolute truth.
Well, not to me. What I'm saying is that it's if you're going to talk about absolute truths, then put it this way: it's like, stop talking about the square being round. Talk about something like religion. It's like religion or God cannot be an absolute truth, even though pretty much the entire world, like 95% of the entire world, believes in God. For the simple fact that there's maybe 1 to 5% of atheists that don't believe in any God whatsoever. So how can God be an absolute truth? Can't be.
And exactly. No, I agree with that 100%.
But with that, at the same token, it's not to say that people wouldn't be allowed to believe in God in wherever they are or not believe in God. At the end of the day, I could tell you God's real. You could tell me he's not. Both of us would be, I guess, we'd know the truth in our own hearts because we believe in it. But at the end of the day, we wouldn't really be able to prove it. So how could that be a truth?
Exactly.
I could draw a square. And I can prove to you that it has 4 sides. And then I can show you the definition of a square. And you can read the definition and then look at the picture that I just drew you. That would be an absolute truth.
Unless
what? Unless you went to Wikipedia and changed the fucking definition. You know what I mean? It's like,
unless I create a whole nation where any knowledge outside of what I make that country to believe is all shut off, and then the reality in which I create at that moment is going to be what's absolute truth to them. But it wouldn't be an absolute truth, therefore, because...
But that's what I'm saying. You would have to be doing it with the knowledge that you're doing it. Do you understand? Like, if you were to create a nation and to be able to make them believe that all squares are round, you'd have to know that they're not. Like, you'd have to understand what you're doing to be able to create that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's possible.
What is?
I mean, I can't say it's been done to create a nation and make everyone believe. Besides that, I'm going to move on from that point because I'm going to I've explained what I had to say. But each person, with that being said, their own reality can be their own simulation. And if that's the case as well, who's to say the past is even, all these past things are even real? Because, you said it yourself, all it takes is to burn a library down.
Right.
In order to wipe out anything that's ever happened. From that point, someone could create their own story of what happened in the past or rewrite. Because, you've had a lot of leaders who have done some pretty shady shit.
Right.
Changed the way things are run, changed the rules. They could have rewritten history.
People have rewritten history.
Exactly. So to say...
It's called the Bible.
Fair point. To say history is what we believe it as now, so who's to say that we haven't already reached this point in technology and just killed ourselves, and now we're reliving it all over again? I mean, or our simulation has already ended and we've restarted another one.
I mean, that's probably what has happened. I mean, there's already, I think there was studies in the Amazon where there's been cities, entire cities and civilizations that were just overgrown by plants. Basically the earth just grew over this shit, but through this, I forgot what type of mapping it is. It's a geo mapping or something like that. They're able to see through technology to see all of these different avenues and areas that been completely covered up over time. So yeah, and just with the pyramids and things like that, it's we've probably gotten to a point past where we're at right now potentially lost control of the grid, lost all ties to all of that, and then had to restart from scratch.
You know, there's another theory that really had me stuck about that is, what if our civilization got more advanced than we are now? They left.
Yeah,
And
I've heard people talk about that theory as well.
whole new one started. So we've already built a civilization, gotten way past where we are, or maybe it was a little bit different. Maybe, you know, we're going more towards the AI, or so it seems. We won't know until we get there. But those people have left and already set up camp on a whole different planet, way past where we are. And for all we know, aliens could be those people.
Just us from a different time.
Exactly. Who's to say that's not true?
Nobody, I mean, could say that that's not true. But what I'm saying is that, like, okay, so put it this way. I think about, like, how on Rick and Morty, I think season 3, episode 2, whenever they went to go, when they went to, like, the, what's it called? When the Thunderdome, what's it called?
It was
like a Mad Max place.
It was the Mad Max
when
world,
they went there, and like they had like that green orb, and they showed them all how to like utilize it to like fuel their technology and energy and everything. Think about like how if there was like a superior like us that figured out how to leave, you understand that it would be like the end of that episode whenever Rick just took the last green rock and then left. Like whoever is leaving Earth is not really gonna be concerned about coming back. Whoever's leaving Earth is taking all the technology they can with them, getting the fuck out of here and fucking Xing out Earth on the map. I'm saying that shit's done. We fucking ran through that bitch.
Yeah, it could have been a similar situation.
You know what I mean?
The world's about to destroy
let them
us.
figure it out for themselves. We the elites figured our own shit out. So like we got out of there. We're on to the next civilization or the next planet that we found. And then basically for everybody else, if you can't afford it, then figure your own shit out. That's not my business.
The world has been around for a while.
That's true.
Exactly.
Been around for Earth's been around for like what 7.4 billion years?
No, 4.543 billion years.
It was 4.5. You said
4.5 billion years. So that's enough time for a species to die, or a species to leave, years to pass by, and then a whole new one start.
And that's more than enough. But by that logic, if you're talking about that, it's like we don't really understand life itself. So it's like for that to be the case, you could say the same thing about like other species in other parts of the universe that have been around longer than 4.3 billion years, because the universe is 14 billion years old. 14 point.
What is?
The universe.
14 billion?
I believe so. I might be tripping. I might want to look that up. But what I'm saying is that if we're only 4.3 out of whatever that 14 or 15 or however many billion years old the universe is, then like there's still an astounding 9 to 11 billion years of other worlds having the chance to have life be introduced there.
How many years did you say that the world was, or the universe?
I said 14.
Close. 13.77 billion.
Okay, and Earth's been around for 4.3, so that's still 9.4 billion years of the universe existing without Earth. And we've been around for about 100,000 years.
Yeah, I hate to be that person who says this, but it's just, how can you possibly think we're the only thing to exist in a span of almost 14 billion years? And even with the fact of the Earth being around for, what was it? What we say? I already forgot. Honestly,
well, I mean, I don't know.
4.5 billion.
We might not even exist, like, as far as simulation theory goes. So, like, if we don't exist, then maybe the Earth and the universe don't exist, and this is all just a computer.
It all existed at the same time.
Potentially, maybe not computer, but I don't know the answer. I don't think anyone does. But what I'm saying is that like that doesn't necessarily matter, because like as far as like my situation goes, so like this is like not necessarily what I believe, but I like to think about this thought process a lot. Like there's like the thought process of like whenever Rick and Jerry were stuck in the fucking simulation, and like they kept getting like brought back and like, haha, it's just another simulation, haha, it's just another simulation. In that, do you remember how like whenever like they were putting all the attention on Rick and Jerry's world, like the only things that were being paid attention to so that Jerry wouldn't figure out as a simulation was everything around him. So basically it's like the only things that are being simulated in your simulation is just your surroundings. Basically it's like the thought of like you don't actually have blood in your body until you cut open your hand to see if there's something comes out. Does that make sense? Like the blood is only simulated once you are able to visualize it. Like kind of like the thought of having a hollow body.
I like the Schrodinger's cat, you know,
yeah,
it's the bot, or it's Schrodinger's.
I don't know, actually.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's what it's kind of like, but it's kind of like this table is hollow. It's not. They're like it's made like the outside is hard. Don't get me wrong, but there's no like wood in between this top part and this bottom part. It's kind of like that thought. Like there's nothing in there until you get a saw and actually try to open it.
Yeah, so
then it's simulated in type shit.
So Schrodinger's cats there's a box. And there may or may not be a cat in the box. You don't know. You could hear a meowing in that box. You don't know if the cat is both dead and alive until you open that box.
Right.
Until you open it and see whether the cat is dead or alive. Both dead and alive at the same exact time.
And it was like, to go back to the Matrix, there was like I think it was in the first one, whenever there was like some kid that was actually in the Matrix trying to teach Neo about the Matrix. He was bending a spoon and he handed it to Neo and he was kind of teaching how to bend it, and he said he's like, the trick is not to think about the spoon, or it's not, he said the trick is not to focus on the spoon, is to realize that there is no spoon. So like he's literally handing him a spoon and he's holding the spoon in his hand, but he's saying the trick isn't to focus on the spoon to bend it, it's to realize that the spoon doesn't exist. So you can do with that whatever you want with whatever doesn't exist.
Crazy thought.
Right.
Something that's potential that is. Imagine.
So like it basically. Imagine what?
I was gonna say, imagine if you were to see yourself. You know, so you walk outside and let's say there was another apartment across the way from where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
Walk out on the balcony, yourself staring back at yourself.
Right.
At that point, it's two realities. Is that you?
No, I mean, in a sense, if
it's you, okay. Imagine if let me put this more, because there's this movie that it made me think of this movie. So these people walk out of the house, right, and they leave, and they look back, and they can see themselves at the house that they just left it. Like they're still in the house, you know what I mean? But then they can see them. Is that you still? Is that still you at that point?
Of like a version of you. Bro, like honestly, the more I think about it, it's like there's so many bases that Rick and Morty has touched on. It's like, okay, so think about like whenever Beth thought she was a clone, like she's like said, like even if that was me, even if you made an exact clone of me, that Beth didn't like, she like left in her family. She didn't love her husband. She left her kids. Like I can't be a part of that. Even if that was me, I can't be a part of that. So I choose to do something different. Like even if it is you, I feel like you do have the option to do anything differently, if that makes sense.
It does, because if that's the case, it brings me back. So if you were to see yourself, you know, in that world, it's not a parallel. It's almost like a parallel universe, but you're in the same universe, and you were to see yourself, you're both existing and not existing at the same point. Because if there's you, then there's another you. So you exist, but you also are not existing.
Well, you either do exist or you are infinitely never existing.
Or is it both?
You either singularly exist or you would infinitely never exist.
But you'd also infinitely exist as well.
How so?
Because there's going to be infinite versions of yourself.
Potentially.
Well,
that's what I'm saying. It's like you either exist singularly or there is infinite versions of you, which would make it appear like you never existed.
And so putting it into perspective, if there is another you that you see that was you before, if I were to leave this apartment and then see myself still here saying this, like getting up, say I get up, all right guys, it's nice seeing y'all, I'm going to leave. I leave, I look back and I see myself getting up. All right, guys, nice seeing you. I'm gonna leave. There's
Okay.
no absolute truth at that point, because from whatever happens from that point is not to be known.
Well, the absolute truth would be that moment. It would be that moment. All right, guys, I'm about to leave. The absolute truth would be that you left. The destination would be the thing up in the air. It would be like the.
Unless something were to happen to change that moment.
What do you mean? Like
anything could happen to change that moment. You haven't seen it yet, but there's this movie that just came out on Netflix. Also, a movie I would highly suggest. In the Tall Grass.
Oh my God.
Great movie. I know I've been talking about
our friends have fucking deemed this Daniel's movie because he's been promoting this movie so much lately. I still haven't seen it, but
like In the Tall Grass, about these people that get stuck.
In the tall grass.
Surprise. Get stuck in the tall grass. But it's kind of like they're stuck in a time loop until they're not. Not gonna tell you what happens, but it's like they're stuck in a time loop until they're not stuck. So it's a recurring event happening. What you would think this is an absolute truth because it keeps happening, but then at some point it stops. So then when, it wouldn't be in that point. It wouldn't. So it's
okay. So
it's all real until it's not.
Right.
So in essence, what I deem to be truth and reality is reality until it's not. So this is my point, and you could say, like you said, everything around you, whenever we're Rick and Morty, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said you focus on everything around you, right?
Right.
But you're the only thing that's real in that moment. If you're in a simulation, the only thing that's really real is you, correct?
Right.
If you were to be in a simulation. So if we all think we're in a simulation, we're all the only real thing, officially. So we think.
But that's what I'm saying.
To you would be the only thing that could necessarily be an absolute truth, if things were a simulation or if we were in the Matrix, would be ourselves.
Well, okay. Yes. So look, if existence is a simulation, then yes. But if Earth is a simulator, or not a simulator, or just say for this argument, a quantum computer. Earth is a quantum computer, and there are many simulations within this quantum computer. We are our own simulation, therefore we are our own only real thing. But we exist among other simulations in something that is artificial. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So therefore, we would be able to feel like independent and singular, and like nobody else could understand our simulation because they don't. But that doesn't mean they're so different from us that they like are something different.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
But are we creating, so in essence, are we all simultaneously creating the world that we live in?
Yes.
We're all simultaneously creating our own world.
That was never questionable at all. Yes, I know, that's for sure. Nobody else is creating our world for us. Necessarily, I mean, I can't necessarily prove that, but it doesn't make, because at that point you would basically just throw all your free will out the window.
But if you're in a simulation, do you have free will?
You have the free will to experience your own simulation. In this simulation, at least, I get to say that because I was born in a simulation that gave me America and the ability to say something comes to my mouth.
And this where I want to kind of pull this into it as well. So when we're looking at the aspect of God, and people say God created us, so therefore, God decides what we do. So
or like they say, is a divine plan.
But if God did, it's just the same thing. If I were to create a simulation that's this intelligent, correct? They're gonna have their own. They're gonna be able to make their own decisions at some point. If it's either people want to believe they have free will, but if you believe in God at that point, this divine plan, it's one or the other, bud. I mean, you might have a path that you might like be more prone to go down. It's just like you have all of these choices.
I think that if there is a God, then there is a divine plan, and the divine plan is to allow people to make mistakes and learn. Just because there's a divine plan doesn't mean this has to happen this way and this has to happen this way. The divine plan could be things are going to happen in a certain order, as far as like natural disasters, climate change, things that people just cannot do anything about, like fucking diseases and shit like that. Stuff's going to happen in life that people have zero clue how to deal with, and they're going to have to come together to figure it out so that this human race can survive. So like the divine plan doesn't necessarily have to be I woke up at 10 o'clock, so it's my divine plan to be at church by 11. Doesn't necessarily have to be that. It could just be something as simple as this is going to be what's better for the human race. But my point is that if there's a heaven and a hell, then that means that there's a place for people that don't follow the divine plan. Right? Why else would you build a hell? If everybody's on this divine plan and everybody's brothers and sisters and children of God, then everybody should go to heaven, right? Because there's a divine plan. If everybody sticks to it, everybody's a child of God, it seems like everybody ends up in heaven. The only reason that there's a hell is because people differ from that divine plan.
Which would then mean that we do have free will.
Which would then mean that God doesn't like people doing what he doesn't like agree with. Which is fair if you're a god. You can have the right to do that, but at the end of the day, does that make you very what's the word, like righteous? Is that very righteous of you to say you aren't doing what I'm saying, therefore you deserve an eternity of burning in hell?
How forgiving are you really?
Right.
Wow. So if you're in a simulation, we're all creating our own. If we're all creating our own reality, so to speak, then at what point does this reality not exist? At what point does what's the absolute truth of our reality?
That we're gonna experience it until we don't. Isn't us even having a reality not really that much of an absolute truth? If you're saying an absolute truth could be ended by something changing it, wouldn't life not even be an absolute truth by that thought process?
And it might not be, because we don't know. We don't know.
Well, then, if life's not even an absolute truth, then an absolute truth must just not exist.
And that's a scary thought.
Okay, well, why is that scary?
Because it means there's nothing that's for certain.
If there's nothing that's for certain, then that means that there's a lot of things that you get to think about and maybe theorize, and that's pretty fun if you ask me.
A lot of things you could do. That means there's no rules.
First of all, if you're gonna say that life isn't an absolute truth, then why would you spend any of your life doing things you don't like doing? It would be reason enough to do what you actually like doing, just to know that maybe this isn't real. Why would I spend something fake doing something I hate?
Kind of wrapping back into what we were talking earlier, is with that being said, why would you care so much about power or being in power of everything, instead of maybe realizing, hey, if we all get together, we can do something even bigger? Instead of saying, I'm going to rule this place. If everyone's, I'm going to rule these people, you're not really making any progress at that point.
Well, maybe it's
just stagnant.
Maybe it's just as simple as, like you said, is like if people get the notion that I have like my own like reality, like I'm the only thing that's real in my simulation, then people are gonna want like the whole of the simulation to act as like they want their absolute truths to be the absolute truths. So therefore, they're gonna fight or take whatever precautions necessary to make that happen. In a lot of cases, it means gaining power or political power, and like that's a scary thought, because it's like, damn, like, so basically these people are only doing these things for selfish reasons, potentially. I don't know. But it seems like it.
But then it'd make what they're doing their absolute truth at that point. And then they are making their own reality,
exactly.
Creating a world of their own. It's just a crazy thing to think. And it kind of goes against the whole thing that we are all connected at that point, if that's what you do believe. Almost like it doesn't go against saying that we're all interconnected, but if you're going down that route, you're kind of
See, because
defying that.
we could like just be connected in the way that we're all the same in the way that we're not, kind of like if okay, so in that same example, if Earth's a computer and we're all different simulations, we're still connected, like interconnected with each other, because we're still inside the same computer. We still like experience the same computer pretty much, like for the most part. Like there's different regions of the Earth and there's different like politics and different like ways that things are carried out, but for the most part, like we understand life as what it is for a certain list of things. Like you check a few boxes, okay, this is life. But so that's what I'm saying, is like since we still are able to recognize that we are still necessarily interconnected, we just maybe not on the same way. Like my soul touches your soul, touches his soul, touches her soul. Like maybe that doesn't exist if souls don't exist, if we're all simulations, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not inter all.
Kind of makes me think about one of our earlier podcasts when we were talking about determinism or versus free will. If it kind of like the fact of from the starting point of existence, everything just kind of been a reaction from that point on. It's just something that's happened, and every decision from there is kind of stemmed from whatever happened before it, rather than the fact of, I guess you could say we have free will, but is it because of this thing that happened, because of that thing that happened, because of the thing before it, because of the thing before it. You made that decision because of something that happened before. So
Right.
did you really have the free will, or were you just basically like chain reaction sort of thing happening after the fact?
And like, did you really have the free will to do that, or was it like basically your only choice because what has happened?
All the other
before
because we all have, if we all have our own choices, was it really your own choice, or because of all these other choices that were already set and all these other things that already happened? So therefore,
This
you
is
made
the only thing you're left
the only
with.
thing that you were really left, because you have all these variables, but it's also up to what someone else does. Am I right?
In
So
some cases,
you're making
yeah.
in a sense, you could say, and that could kind of go into the factor where you're saying you're in the right place at the right time doing what you're supposed to, because that is the only decision you were able to make based off of every other decision that everyone else made. And we all made the collective decision that we had made because of something that happened prior. What you could say is how we're connected in a way then is if all of our decisions affect each other, which they do.
Which in a lot of ways, yeah.
Exactly. So
and our own decisions, like with ourselves, do affect other people as well. Not just other people's like decisions for themselves affect us. Like what we do, even if something I do has no physical toll on anybody, it could have emotional tolls. Like basically, if I jump off a bridge, people are still gonna understand. Like that's still gonna have a ripple effect throughout other people. You know what I mean? It's not gonna just end with me, even though I'm harming myself. That makes sense?
yes.
So like you're still gonna feel something. Maybe might not understand why you feel it, but you'll still feel some type of pain in that.
And that could affect someone that they meet the next day.
Right.
And then the next person, and then whoever they talk to, you never know what. And it is a weird thought to say what is the truth, or what is just perception, or is perception truth, to say the least. And to say how far we've come, and to say, and that kind of, it goes to say is what we were saying about when conquering conquest, finding resources or just for power has led up to where we are now. So what I'm saying, if it was a simulation, or if it's not, is it inevitable for us to live the same reality over and over again, whether we realize it or not? Because we don't necessarily know what the past is, because it could have been rewritten. Maybe we've left, or maybe civilizations have just died out and then reborn. So for all we know, are we destined just to relive the same reality beforehand?
I mean, for all we know, yeah, potentially, but I'm not really sure about that. I mean, it would take some type of change that you were talking about, like you were saying, like if I got up off the couch and left, and then I saw myself get up off the couch and leave, and then that person saw himself get up off the couch and leave. It would take something breaking that cycle to know that cycle existed.
There
So it would take something breaking this cycle to understand if there was a cycle at all.
was one thing that we had talked about outside of podcasting that kind of made me think about it as well. As, it wouldn't be something we could implement now in the U.S., but way back when, something we could have implemented, which they did at some point. Like everybody served some time in the military or just get an idea. At that point, it wouldn't be the worst thing either, because then at least everyone would have some kind of tactic. We could be more of a defensive nation than an attacking nation, because if someone were to attack, everyone would every male would have to serve.
It wouldn't. I wouldn't say that it would never cause anyone to need an attack or a defense again, but it would cause everyone to understand what an attack and a defense is. Nowadays, whenever you think attack, all you think about is somebody else doing something for you, because you've never been in that position. You don't even know what it means to attack. I don't even know what it's to attack. But what I'm saying is that these people that make these decisions to attack or defend, or where's this money going to the military, or where's like these troops going and what are they doing when they're there, it's like these decisions are like, I'm not all of the time, but a lot of the time are being made by people that never served, which is an issue in my head. If I'm somebody's son that just like signed up for the military, and now some rich asshole that literally just has gotten into power because of their last name just figured out that, hey, I guess it's time to attack Syria. You know what I mean? It's like that. I'm not using that as like an example of something that has happened. What I'm saying is that is a potential thing that could happen, and that's scary in my head.
Exactly. So I mean, yeah, if every male were to serve, it would raise the standard of living.
It would raise the standard of living, as well as like the attention to what the costs really are of war.
And then more so, there wouldn't be as many attacking countries as defensive countries, because if every male in the country had to serve, I understand it's a lot of resources to train people though, and money. So it's
kind of like
doesn't seem as viable.
It's a difficult thing to implement in a world where people love playing video games and eating corn dogs and not doing shit. But in a world where like my argument about this was that if this was implemented in like early civilizations, and maybe even like early like even in Conquest days, like whenever people were still taking over, it's like, I'm not saying that it was good to conquest places, but if you did it with a more like educated military, it may have like had a lot of better outcomes.
Most of the better leaders of the earlier civilizations and empires were actually
right, like
war leaders. Yeah, war leaders, which is crazy to think of, because those were some of the smarter people. The tactics they had to use, leadership skills they had to have, it was, and camaraderie and understanding what it meant to lead people.
See, like what I could never grasp is like how a fucking military general in England would have to kiss the foot of a 7-year-old just because their mom died and now they're the queen. And it's like, I'm just like, I get it, like royalty, I understand, like you have traditions, but at the end of the day, I've put, like, if I'm a war general and I've put my life on the line for this country many times just to get to where I'm standing today, if I have to kiss a child's foot just because that child was born into the right house, fuck you, dude. Like, kill me now. This life means nothing. Like, I thought that I was doing something for pride, for freedom, for something, but I'm now kissing a children's foot just because of their last name. Like, that seems a little outlandish in my opinion.
That's what, yeah. So if everyone had to go through a similar thing, everyone would have a newfound respect for what it means to do something.
Like, what does royal blood even mean?
That's like, who puts you in that position?
Like, what does royal blood even mean? Like, it's royalty. What does that even mean? It's still a human, right? They don't have superpowers.
They can die, yeah.
They don't have superpowers. They can't heal people. They don't have super philosophical like points that make so much sense that we need to respect them with everything. No, this is just another human that could potentially just be another asshole. That person's gonna run a country one day. And it's like, that's what I'm saying. Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. That half of the world, if not 95% of the world, used to run on shit like that.
It almost reminds me too, if that were the situation, is if everyone was a superhero, then no one would be a superhero.
Right.
You know, because then everyone has powers.
Right. It's like,
so
if everyone's a god, then no one's a god.
In retrospect,
Right.
So if everyone has that, you know, it's you go to war, it's gonna be everyone against everyone. At that point, it's not just your army against my army. Everyone would have some kind of skill. At least you know how to defend yourself. You would know combat. You would kind of have. It would raise the standard of living for everybody if everyone implemented that, even in other countries. And once again, you'd have people that want power, but also if you have those countries that have more numbers, you're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then no one power would be able to go unless it was, you know, no one country would ever be able to dominate.
See, but that's what I'm saying is like your royalty in systems like that would be based off of productivity rather than blood.
Exactly.
Which is ultimately necessary. It's like, if you're going to be the most productive person in the world, then yes, I agree, you can maybe get some say in some of these things. You don't do shit but choose your gold rings for the day. Bro, I don't really want your like public opinion on nothing. You seem like you got a good life. Enjoy it. I'm gonna be over here trying to get my shit together.
Part of understanding that you do create your own reality is understanding that someone else also does in the same way, and understanding there are other people other than yourself. Because it takes one thing to understand, oh, if you know this is my life, I have to create whatever the life I want. You also have to understand that you're not the only one,
right,
as well.
Right.
And understand there's other people around. And I think that's what really differs, and it separates people like Kim Jong-un from a little bit less harsh leaders that aren't dictators per se.
Yeah, I feel that. Well, I mean, it's just like, I guess you have to extrapolate it over time. It's like, even Donald Trump's shenanigans could lead to something. So it's like, you have to kind of understand not just what's happening now, but what could it lead to.
I guess, you know, I'm gonna leave it there.
Yeah.
We're gonna wrap it up. Just to let everyone know, you do create your own life. You have the ability to make change. Your reality is your reality. It may not be absolute truth, but you can make it your own truth. But also understand there's other people around you. Everyone is trying to create the life they want. So to try to understand each other is vital. It's a very vital thing. And if I went through our challenge, there it is. Don't condemn. Next time you talk to somebody, or when you start interacting with people, try not to condemn, try not to judge or criticize. Just kind of try to understand them. Take time to understand them, to accept them for who they are, see where they're coming from, be a little bit more patient. That's not always going to be easy, because there's some people that are going to test your patience over and over again, but do your best. That's all I really have to say. Is there anything you want to put out there, Josh? You might want to tell everybody.
Not really. Just thank you guys for listening. It means a lot for us to see those views number go up every week. And just keep tuning in. This is far from finished. Wait, just hold on. I wasn't done. This is far from finished, but me and Chance Maynard got a new podcast coming out called Court Vision, and then him and our other friend Joel Teagues, who's here at the studio with us, are creating a podcast called No Topic as well. That's going to be all coming to you guys shortly. We're fucking super psyched to get all of this fucking content out to you all. So keep on tuning in. We'll keep on pushing it out.
With that being said, also follow us on our socials at Finish From Far. My personals at RadDudeDandy.
And at Josh_M7.
Also give a follow to Chance and Joel as well, because they help us with the production here, with the audio, video, marketing. They're doing a great job, and really appreciate them coming together and joining the team. And that's going to be for Chance at Fatality, FAYTALITY, and then for Joel at Teagues TV. That's going to be TEEGS TV.
Go ahead and go suck the breast milk of today's teat.
All right. Well, this is Far From Finished. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Have a wonderful week. Thank you.